Hey everyone, welcome back to the next episode of the Weekly Coder. I'm Chris, and in this episode we are going to continue from where we left off of Conway's Game of Life. So our last tutorial, basically what did we do? Let's click play and see where we left off. Oh yeah, our last one was to save, right? So we can make some changes. We can press S, which will save. And we can then undo those changes here and then press L and it'll load that up. So that's cool, right? Because we can make changes, we could save them, but it's kind of limited because we can only ever save one and that's it. So there can be only one, right? But we want more than one. So the way that we do that is we're going to have a way to interact with the file system, right? We need to be able to see, well, first of all, we need a way to specify a name, okay? So if we want to save our pattern, we want to give that a name, a unique name, so that we can save more and more and more. So like pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 4, and so on. And then we'll need a way to actually view the file system to see what patterns there are that we can load from, and then we'll need a way to load those in. So the cool thing is that we've already basically written all the code that is, basically takes care of saving and loading. We just need a way to interact with the file system so that we can, instead of having those static names in there, we can be a little more dynamic with that, right? So the first thing we need to do, and this will be fun, I don't know how much fun, because it all depends on how much you love building UIs in Canvas. I don't really care for it that much, but it's a very simple system. So the first thing we need to do to actually build a canvas in Unity is we need to go up to actually, I always find it easier to just right click, and that's not it. What's happening here? I feel like I'm missing something. It's a game object. Right, exactly. Okay, so I don't know, I just had like a brain cloud for a minute. So we go up to game object and then to UI and then we go to canvas. So the first thing we need to change is we need to go into here and the canvas scaler, and we need to change that to scale with the screen size, and then we need to give it a reference resolution of 1024 by 768. So that what happens is that if the screen scales, it'll always be in this resolution, which is what we're designing this game for. Let's see if we set the screen display here to 1024 by 768. So that way our canvas will always match our aspect ratio of 1024 by 768 no matter how we scale the screen, okay? And that's what we want. So all this other stuff we can kind of just reference pixels per unit. I think that stays at 100 if I'm not mistaken. We will find out, won't we? So if we go to scene and we double click on canvas, we can see, and I know this is where it gets confusing for a lot of folks, is when you do the canvas and you like zoom in on it, it's like, okay, well, wow, what is happening here? It's like way outside of my camera. How can my camera possibly see the entire canvas? And that's not kind of how that works. The canvas is kind of separate from your game camera. It's got like its own way of displaying. So you can always think of this as that. And this basically will always take up your entire game view, right? So from here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create, let's start with the save dialog, okay? So we're just going to create this all completely visually. And you know what's cool about other systems like Xcode and think Visual Studio, is they have all these pre-built controls for all these dialogues, right? So if you want to present a save dialogue or load dialogue or any of those, they already have these completely done for you, so you could just import those controls and show them. But with Unity, there's no such thing as far as I'm aware of. If anybody knows different, let me know. But so we're just going to be creating them manually. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an empty game object under the canvas, and I'm just going to name this save dialog. And this way all of our save dialog components are going to live inside of this save dialog game object. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to add a UI component, and that is going to be an image. Okay, and the image isn't going to be any particular sprite or anything, or sorry, it's not going to have a source image. It's literally just going to have a color. And what we're going to do here is we're going to give this a dark sort of grayish color, and you guys can do whatever you want with your colors. I'm not going to try and dictate how this should look for you. I just like shades of gray. So that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to probably go a little darker here. Oops. Right. And then what you'll want to do is you'll want to change the width and height of this to be 284 by 164. And you guys can play around these with these values until you get something that you like. But this works for me. Position is going to be 0 and 0. Okay, and this is going to actually be our border for our dialog box. So what we need to do now is we need to draw another image on top of it, which will actually be our background. So let's name these. This one is going to be called background border image. I find it really helpful to make sure that you name all of these so that you can actually keep track of what's what. So now we're going to create another one, image, and this one, let's make it a sort of lighter gray. What? Okay. So we're going to go with something like this, maybe? Let's go with that. And this one we're going to make slightly smaller than the one behind it so that we can make it look as though it has a border, right? So we're going to go with 280 and 160. So now if you look at this, if we uncheck that, it looks like we have a border here, right? So that's kind of cool. And we're going to call this one background image. And now let's create our title bar, which is going to be still a shade of gray. So we're going to go up here again and go down to UI and add an image. And the width for this is going to be 280. And the height is going to be 32. So we also need to change the Y position here to 64. And then we're going to make this just kind of in between the background color and the or the border color and the foreground color, maybe. Oops. So something like that. Maybe a little darker. And you guys, you have to play around with these until they look good to you. I am no artist, so I'm not going to even pretend that I know anything about what I'm doing here with these colors. Let's zoom in some more here. Maybe a little darker. I don't like this shade, actually. This background image is too dark for me. So let's go a little lighter on the background. There, that looks a little better. Okay. So now what we'll need is an input, okay? And that you can also grab from the UI, and we're going to go with input field. And the settings for that is going to be 250 in the width and 30 in the height. And then all we're going to do is modify Y to be 14. And we're going to change the placeholder text. Whoops. That's actually in here. Placeholder text as enter text. Pattern name. Okay, and then this text box here, this will be for when they enter text. So not going to see that. So this input field, we can actually, you know what? Let's rename this image to title. There's a background title image, and then this input field will be pattern name input. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is actually create the title text, right? So we'll go in here and do UI, new text, and this text we are going to say enter a name for your pattern. Actually, that's kind of redundant because we already know that that's what we're going to do in the text box. So we'll just call this save pattern. And oh, that's wrong. We can't do that. That actually has to be done here. Save pattern. And the color for that, we're going to make that slightly lighter. Probably about here. And the width for that is going to be 230 and 23 for the height. And then we're going to change the Y position to be 63 and the X position to be negative 38 or not. It's okay, we can just use the transform tool and just move that wherever we want. I'm going to say right there. And it's probably still not right. You know what, let's set this to be centered or vertically. And then what we can do is we can just move this up to here, where Y equals 65. So our final resting place here, let's make this negative 20 for X and 65 for Y, with a width of 230 and a height of 23. So that now gives our dialog a title. And the next thing we need to have is an actual button to save. So we'll create a, actually let's call this title text. And then we'll go up here in the save dialog again, and we're going to create a button. And this button is going to be in the width, we're going to have 160, and the height we're going to have 30. We're going to leave it that way. We're going to do negative 41 for the position. And then we're going to drill down into the button and go to the text object, and we're going to change the text for the button to be save. And as far as fonts and stuff, we'll just leave that all the same. The final thing that we're going to want to do is put an close button, right? Because we want to close the dialog. And that usually lives up here in the corner. So let's rename this one to save button. And then we're going to create another button. And that button is going to be a little smaller. It's going to be 30 in the width and 30 in the height. And then its position is going to be 125 and 65. So that puts it right there in the corner. And then we are going to change its text to X. And now we've got a close button. And that's going to be quit button. Okay, so now if we zoom out, if we actually press the play button, we'll see that this will be centered on our screen. Right there. And we can click on this and we can type stuff in it. If you guys noticed that every time I press S, it's actually saving the file. That is going to then open the save dialog instead. And also we need to make sure that once the save dialog box opens, we have to have like a boolean that says, hey, the save dialog is open, so don't try to open it again, because it's just gonna it's not gonna work. It's gonna do something funky. Maybe. Okay. So this will quit the dialog and this will save the file. Okay, so I guess what we can do now, how are we looking on time? Okay, we got enough time. We can do the, we can create the save dialog script, which is going to be here. So we'll right click in the scripts folder, create C# script. We'll call this save dialog. And just so that we don't forget, we're going to go ahead and select save dialog and drag the save dialog script onto the save dialog game object. So let's open that up and see what we got. So in order for our quit button to work, we actually have to have a method for that, right? So the way that's going to work is we're going to get rid of start and update because that's not going to do anything in here. We're definitely going to need Unity engine.ui. And from here, let's create two methods. I'm going to have one called save pattern and one called quit dialog. So as far as quitting the dialog, it's very, very simple. All we have to do is do game object set active false. So basically what we're telling it is that the game object that the script is a component of, set that to false. So what's going to happen is it's going to deactivate the game object so it won't be visible to us anymore. Also, when we click save, we want to set the game object to false because we want the dialog to disappear after we click the save button. Now, that's not the only thing that's going to live in this save pattern method, but for now, we're going to have to leave it at this because the next part of the code that we're going to need to actually do anything with, we're going to have to actually add some more functionality to our overall game to be able to handle all that, and that'll be in maybe the next one, or not. Maybe in the next one, what we'll do is we'll create the load dialog, and that one, I think what we'll do there is we'll probably just copy the game object of the save dialog and then make a couple of changes and then just rename it to the load dialog. Because there's no reason to, reinvent the wheel, right? So copy and paste is your friend a lot. Let's see, can we do anything else to the save dialog today? No. Well, I guess we can go ahead and add the, we're going to need to set input field, pattern name. So we need to assign the input field to that so that we can have a reference to the pattern name. And we're making this public so that we can access this outside of the class. And I'll show you how that's going to work in a little bit. But for right now, let's save this and go back to Unity. Okay, so we need to add functionality to our button, and the way to do that is you click on the button that you want to add the functionality to, and then we just go down here at the bottom of that in the inspector. We have our unclick, and right now our list is empty. We need to add a game object, and the game object is going to be the object that we have the script on. And in this case, we're not going to find it in the assets folder. We need to actually look in the scene, and by looking in here, we can click on the save button. Okay, that's our game object. Actually, not the save button, sorry. It's the save dialog. Okay, so that'll be our game object that we click on. And if we click on this, where it says no function, you'll see that under the save dialog, which is the component that we added, we should see a quit dialog. Alright, and that is our method that we created. So the same thing with the save button. We come down here, we say scene, we go to the save dialog, and then for the function, we're going to go back down to save dialog, and we're going to say save pattern. And then we're going to have to change this to editor and runtime so that they actually function in both. Alright, so now if we press play, we should be able to close this pattern, or this dialog. There we go. So now if we press S, it doesn't come up. That's because we need to actually make it show when we press the S button. So right now, the way I want to do that is I'm going to write a separate class. Yep, that's how we're going to do it. We're going to create another game object, and we're going to call this one HUD. And we're going to create a class for that. So a C# script. And we're going to name it HUD. Now let's open that up. And we're going to set some properties on this, where you need to have a property for our save dialog. And we don't have our load dialog yet, so let's not even worry about that just yet. In the start, then, we're going to do save dialog dot game object dot set active equals false. So right away when this loads, it's going to set our save dialog game object to false so that it doesn't show up right away. We don't need the update method in here. Okay, so the HUD loads on the scene. That means that when we press play here, our save pattern shouldn't be there. Oh, we didn't assign it. So we need to go back to HUD, and we need to actually put the script on the HUD, and then we see how we have a save dialog property here, and that wants a save dialog game object. I'm just going to drag this over here, and now if we press play, alright, no save dialog. Okay, so that means it's hidden by default, and we're going to go one step further here and go ahead and deactivate it in the inspector as well. So in order to call up the save dialog box, we're going to do that from the game class. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go over here where we have our user input. And you know what? Someone actually asked me to change the background color of my editor to a dark gray. So I'm going to do that because, you know, I've been meaning to do that anyways because I don't like this bright white. It's really hard to look at. So we're going to go with the dark theme. And I think I have to restart it. So let's close Visual Studio. Game. Alright, now it's dark. Alright. So now in the game class, what we'll do is we'll go over to user input. And in here, where we have our save, right? Instead of calling save pattern, what we're going to do is, before we do that, let's go ahead and add a property that we can associate our HUD with. So it'll be public HUD, okay? So then what we can do from our user input for save, we can just come in here and say HUD dot save dialog dot wouldn't it be much prettier if we had something to say like HUD.SaveDialog.show? So in order to do that, we have to go back to HUD. And what we'll do here is we'll add a method. Public method. Void show. And save dialog. Or we could do, yeah, show save dialog. And in here, we just do our save dialog dot game object set active true. So then from our game class, we can call HUD.show save dialog, and then that'll show the save dialog. So if we save this and go back to Unity, before we can do anything, we have to go to our game class, and we have to add our HUD to the HUD property. And from here, if we press play, if we press S, it shows the dialog. If we X, we close it. S, we show it. Save, we close it. There. Okay. And the other thing that you might notice is every time I click the X button, you can also see that I'm placing a square. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that when we are in the dialog that we disable any sort of editor functionality. So that I think we're gonna not do in this tutorial. Probably the next one for sure. So that is it. That's basically the save dialog. In the next video, we're gonna do the load dialog, and then we're going to some more fun stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, and comments go down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Check out my Patreon and follow me there. Your support means a lot to me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.